we'll go ahead and get started. So as we do, we'll begin with generating a positive motivation. So in keeping with that, again, we generate minds of confidence in the Buddha's wisdom, in the mind of bodhicitta, wishing to engage in that wisdom, achieve that result, not only for one's own benefit, but also for the benefit of all sentient beings. So we develop these minds, faith in the teachings, and recognition that the point of the teachings is to replicate the Buddha's insights, to become a Buddha ourselves, so that we can be of limitless benefit to sentient beings. All right. So we are in the section on the non-virtues, and we finished the non-virtues of the body and moved on to the section, the non-virtues of speech. And we had covered the first of those, which is lying. And now we are on day 184, which is going to introduce divisive speech. Were there any questions about last class before we go on to divisive speech? Okay. So a quote from Lama Zopa on day 184: if we engage in divisive speech, our words will have no power except to divide people. And here, he could be, in a way, talking about the karmic repercussion of practicing divisive speech. They do talk in general about how, like, if, like with lying, for example, one karmic repercussion could be that, even if we've just practiced lying kind of intensely in a past life, we may find that people, like, we're generally not believed by people, even when we're telling the truth. And that's kind of this sort of energetic, like people just react to us energetically in a way where they find it, they don't find us credible or trustworthy. So it could be, in a way, talking about that. There they do talk about karmic consequences of negative actions that impact and the converse is also true. Some people, maybe people who are really charismatic, people who are able to use their speech kind of naturally, spontaneously, to to get a lot of, and they may not use that. It's not to say that it doesn't have like a moral component to it. Really, it's sort of just energetic. If they find that they can easily attract people and people easily believe them, they still have to join that with an ethical foundation in order to not be motivated to abuse that. And they may, people who may sort of inherit that karmic benefit from past life virtue may not, which is true of all kinds of karmic ripenings. A person might inherit wealth, etc., and then they might do non-virtuous things with it. So the ripening of karma is not necessarily, which is why dedication, is so important, because we're trying to only create the causes and the conditions for positive karma to ripen in really beneficial, supportive, spiritually meaningful ways. When it just ripens as wealth or status or reputation, those are things that we may not have the other supportive, cooperative causes and conditions or skills to use constructively. So anyway, could be kind of talking about that with respect to the quote, but then the further information explaining divisive speech um, is, he says, the motivation to cause a split between, so this, when we say divisive, we're talking about two or more people and wanting to sow disharmony or division between two or more people. You may only be in relation to one person. You might be only talking to one person or communicating to one person, but you would be saying things to that one person to cause them to pull away from some other person or some other group. It doesn't necessarily mean that you go to multiple people and spread. You could do that too. They would both kind of qualify, but it's not necessary to spread information among a variety of people. But you can't really have divisive speech unless you have two or more people that are involved, that you're trying to create disharmony between. So the wish to cause a split between a couple or group who are harmonious, the wish for to widen the split, which means that they're not harmonious, which means that there's already, division that's there. There's already kind of acrimony, and your goal is to add fuel to that fire. Your goal is to not try to help heal, but your goal is to actually cause that to get worse. Or the wish even to maintain. So could be the wish to cause, the wish to widen, or even just the wish to perpetuate existing disharmony, even though you're not necessarily, I don't know, how you necessarily quantify that it's at 60% disharmony, and you don't want to go to 61, but you also don't want to go to 59. I'm not sure exactly how you do that, but you may not be trying to make it much worse, but at least you're trying to, you're kind of happy with the level of disharmony that's there, and you're kind of participating in that disharmony and trying to at least keep it going. And he says the worst form of this speech is separating a disciple from their teacher, or creating disharmony among a religious community, a group of religious practitioners. That could even give rise to creating a schism in a sangha using disharmony. So this could lead to that, which is an incredibly powerful negative karma. You might use divisive speech as a mechanism for giving rise to a schism in a sangha. So he says the action, because again, if we look at those, so that's the kind of basis, motivated by, with an afflicted state, wishing to, you're apprehending a person in relation to some other person, or persons in relation to each other, and then you give rise to an action. He says the intent, if the intent is to be divisive, then it doesn't matter if what you're saying is true or not. So here we have to be really careful if we're, to check our motivation, if if we become aware of something that that someone might not want to know about, that if, someone's partner or someone's friend talked about them behind their back, and we, maybe they tried to talk to us, and so now we are aware of that, we have to really have a pure motivation if we're going to try to bring that information to them, and not kind of be like, oh, I never liked that person anyway, so now I get to use this to get the kind of result of, them not being friends anymore, together anymore. So it doesn't mean that we're lying. We may, if someone was critical of someone and we go to that person and say, oh, hey, did you hear that this person is being critical of you? They could all be true, but if we're trying to achieve a result of disharmony rather than achieving, like, you know, maybe if we're genuinely trying to save them from something that seems toxic or something that seems where they're harmed, then that's a better motivation. So we just have to really be clear on whether we're kind of rejoicing in disharmony or whether we're really trying to be supportive. And then it doesn't matter. We uh, get the negative karma of divisive speech is laid in the mind regardless of whether we are successful. It isn't like it's only that they actually are split apart. It was simply our goal was to do it. And we used words, we used a way of communicating that we intended to bring about that result. They might, as Lama Zopa here says, they might see through that. They might see it as, well, you never liked that person and you're just trying to, and so then they might actually feel stronger, have a stronger bond toward that person. But still, from our side, we did engage in divisive speech. And so even if we didn't have any actual negative consequences. Any thoughts about divisive speech? So then day 185 is harsh speech. Lama Zopa says that harsh speech is the heaviest negative karma of speech because it can cause the other person to greatly suffer. So this is anything where we're motivated to wound the other person using our speech, to cause them to feel badly about themselves, or anything that he says, pointing out the other person's faults or finding something that they're sensitive about and using that to attack them. So again, Lama Zopa says it doesn't matter if it's true. We might really think that the other person has some sort of fault, and we might have a lot of evidence that we feel like that they do have this particular. But if we're bringing it up to them because we want to kind of win an argument, or we want them to stop doing something, or we want to manipulate some particular outcome by causing them to sort of shut down or to withdraw because they feel insulted or wounded or harmed, then it doesn't, yeah.
Venerable, so is intention the overriding factor in the karmic debt or karmic load. So, I mean, in other words, could a person have the intention of actually helping someone, but yet your actions cause a schism in the Sangha? Does that still incur a negative karmic debt?
I would say, I mean, we haven't gotten to, because the schism in the Sangha is a specific, it's one of the, you know, actions of immediate retribution. And so, you know, we have to actually, we probably will, I don't know if that will be addressed in this topic, in this, you know, thing, because where he might go through that. But broadly speaking, a person with respect to karma is generally not held responsible for unintended results or unwished for results. You know, there is unskillful action, you know, which is maybe different. Like we just didn't know how to say something or the right way to say it. We didn't know that person's mind. We didn't anticipate how they would react to what we said. And, you know, we just phrased something inartfully. And then there was a reaction. And that reaction is really their responsibility. You know, if we do our best to try to phrase it as in the best way. And, you know, sometimes we're just tired, you know, or we're just stressed out and we don't have the internal resources or reserves in that moment to do better than we did. And, you know, and so generally with karma, it's still, you know, because again, motivation is incredibly, that's what makes Buddhism so difficult, is because it's what it refers to is what's actually present in the mind when the action was engaged in. And usually it's a mix of different things, you know, just in general. We rarely do anything that's entirely positive or, you know, entirely negative. You know, there's usually some combination of different thoughts and different motivations, and so they're each playing their own role in that karmic experience in the mind. So it's kind of like on balance, you know, what predominated in general. Okay.
Thank you.
Coda. You're muted still.
So yeah, one of the other karmic things, we had 16 days to purify before we turned into a murderer, like this kill an ant. It's the same as a human unless you purify. So are there any specific directions if I have a harsh speech moment or a harsh thought moment, how many times I should do Vajrasattva or bow or whatever? I'll be busy for the rest of my life, I know, but is there any specifics on this?
No, I would just no, I mean, I think that guideline is because there's like with regard to killing, I think they talk about it in that way because there's two completely different kinds of sentient being that we can be in relation to. But with kind of all of the others, it's humans that we're, you know, in relation to. Because I don't know that it's not clear with regard to speech. I think if you were to use maybe ill will, like, you know, toward an animal, you know, you certainly could get frustrated with a dog or something, and then you might kind of raise your voice and really, and that is going to, of course, I don't think it would be harsh speech in the sense that they have no idea what you said. So they can't actually interpret it, but they do understand the tone that you
Oh,
used.
yeah, they
They
do.
do understand the aggressive energy.
Mm.
So I think it would be more so like ill will would come into play with that because you still have the same sort of aggressive energy that's present, and it's not positive. We can't say it's positive, or even neutral. Uh,
And I have another question. If we're lucky and practice well, and we stop a habit of harsh speech or anger with driving or whatever the example is, and if we really, really stop it, I know then from then on, we're not sowing more negative karmic seeds on that topic. But does that stopping in this life help burn any of the karmic latencies in our past lives?
well, when you
Please, I
talk
hope.
about when you talk about a cessation, I mean, generally, um, the only way that you can have a real cessation is through seeing emptiness directly. They talk about how they go you go through at the first moment of seeing emptiness directly. You abandon the acquired obscurations, and and they on the bodhisattva grounds and paths. You're basically um, progressing, and but the imprints, the latencies, the tendencies, the habits, they remain even in the mind of a bodhisattva, even in the mind of an Arya bodhisattva. They remain up till like the eighth ground. Um, so we're really stuck with it. um, yeah. So interestingly, with harsh speech, Lama Zopa says using harsh words affectionately and as a joke also creates karma, although it's obviously not as heavy as if we do it with anger. We are creating the habit of using harsh words. The heaviness of the karma also depends on the object. If we jokingly insult a member of the Sangha, for example, that is heavier than saying the same thing to a lay friend. So that's interesting. So to say harsh words affectionately or as a joke, because harsh words are something that generally you say with the wish to wound with your speech. Um, so I guess this would be kind of needling someone, you could say, or um, just kind of being just maybe a little bit unskillful again, kind of like, oh, are you having a bad hair day? Or something like you kind of it's a joke, but there's sort of maybe an undercurrent that's maybe not so positive, or you're it's in your mind it's maybe good natured, or but you're kind of ribbing somebody, you're needling somebody a little bit, and maybe that's just not so great. Certainly not as Lama Zopa says, it's not as intense as actually trying to disturb their mind, actually trying to, but you're getting a little bit of a dig in, or a little bit of a good natured ribbing or needling. And I think Lama Zopa is kind of saying maybe we should watch that too, because it's sort of adjacent to, it's kind of in the ballpark in a way. Um, okay, so day 186 is idle speech, and the quotation It is hard to find anything we say that is not gossiping, is the quotation. So gossip and idle speech sometimes are used synonymously. He says the definition is to say something that is meaningless or to speak without any real purpose. He says the base is, so again, the base, the sentient being. Okay. So he says the base is traditionally sentient beings, although it is still gossip if we're talking to ourselves with nobody listening or paying attention. Or he says if our listener is deaf. The disturbing thought is ignorance, anger, or attachment. The intention is wishing to speak whatever comes into our mind, despite the fact that it has no purpose. It is not necessary to recognize that we're gossiping, but we do need to be aware of the subject matter. The action is attempting to gossip, and the completion is having finished gossiping. So he says the main thing is, again, to check our motivation. Is it the pleasure of showing off, telling them about our achievements? Are we trying to just make people laugh? He says chatting at parties is gossiping without depending on our motivation. So again, this like the quotation says, it's hard to find anything we say that is not gossiping. Like he's not kidding, when he says that. So it's kind of just, as I've said before, Venerable Rabina calls it rabbiting on about nothing. We're just kind of talking. My mom would call it talking to hear our head rattle, is the way that she would, so we just sort of, we're just kind of passing the time, chit-chatting, kind of meaningless, distracted, pointless speech. Because, we ourselves are the ones that are getting more and more familiar with that way of relating to others when we practice it. So that's why it isn't really, in a way, of course, they talk about how we are wasting the other person's time too, because we're kind of we might be preventing them from going and doing something virtuous or helping them to engage in virtue in some way. But of course, it's also, but if our like it says here, if our motivation, is really good, then could be that someone seems depressed, someone seems like they're, not having a good time at a function, and we might try to go up to them and try to bring them into, introduce them to people, bring them, and our motivation might be helping them to make friends, trying to help them socialize or feel more comfortable. So we might be talking about just kind of silly things, but if we're trying to benefit the other person and we think that that's because we don't really know them, etc. We're not going to launch into some complicated philosophical conversation, but our goal is to kind of put them at ease or make them feel welcome or comfortable or appreciated. Then it wouldn't be non-virtuous. But if we're just mindlessly kind of without any real purpose going on and on, and there's no way to avoid this kind of chit chat completely, but I think it's just to be aware, how long is it going on, in what context, what's the point, you know. But yeah, I mean, not every conversation that we're ever going to have is going to be deeply insightful and meaningful, but we can kind of just be thinking about, though, this person that's in front of me, how, am I being of benefit to them? Am I, or am I kind of holding them up? Is it kind of, am I just sort of unloading on this person in front of me, and they're kind of, they want to leave and I'm not letting them, you know, or, so I think the main thing is just, again, to really think, you know, what is this serving? Is this in any way being of any benefit to the person that I'm in relationship with, or is it not?
Venerable, I have a question about the first paragraph of this section. Is he referring to us audibly talking to ourselves, or mentally talking to ourselves, or both? He says it's still gossip if we're talking to ourselves with nobody listening or paying attention.
Yeah.
And I only ask, I've just heard the statement or phrase that there's a lot of internal gossip as well to be aware of. So that's why I'm asking if this is what he's referring to.
Yeah, I don't know, because I mean, they're calling this in terms of the scheme, this is a non-virtue of speech rather than a non-virtue of the mind. So if we're placing it in that scheme, then it seems like literally you're using your voice, or at least some form of communication.
Okay.
You could be it could maybe include like kind of mindlessly journaling. I mean, journaling can have a really important thing too, but if you're just kind of like, oh, and then today this happened and then this happened, and you don't really know why you're keeping track, or it could be like that too, but it seems like it has to be expressive communication in order for it to qualify as a non-virtue of speech, rather than a purely mental karma.
Okay. And this might be an unfair question, and I don't know if this is your experience too, but it seems that I am meeting or have met many people who rabbit on and on and on. And I'm wondering if there's a gracious way to be in that situation without offending or without, I mean, you can't excuse yourself if it's an in-law or fill in the blank, but anyway, whatever you can advise would be appreciated.
Yeah. I mean, in that instance, it isn't really we're not engaging in a non-virtue. What's happening is that we're finding it difficult to accept someone else who is preventing us from, trying to do something that we would rather be doing, which is different. Then in that instance, the danger, for oneself is really that aversion that's arising in the mind. That's really, because I mean, we're not responsible for that person not wanting to, or not being interested in trying to use their speech more meaningfully. What really we're finding, we're like, why are you wasting my time? Why are you? And of course, we might feel pressure to reciprocate. That could be, so that, I mean, it could be that too, where we feel the need, in that situation, we might feel like they are expecting that but I think if, if if we try to, not be like as you're saying, we don't want to be impolite. We don't want to criticize, but we also don't need to add a lot of new energy to that, and I think so. I would say that those are kind of the dual things that are happening. One is that there's an agitation that could be arising in our mind, because we're subjected to something. Like normally, we have our Dharma people, and then like sometimes we have these other, and we're like, oh, why can't you be more like these other people that I would rather, and so that's kind of arising, and that's kind of holding that person with compassion, and trying to keep the mind spacious, keep the mind open, so that kind of agitation isn't arising as strongly. So working with that slowly over time, again, bringing that into meditation, to like, trying to replay those experiences and noticing when the mind moved into agitation, imagining having successfully applied an antidote, and then kind of playing it out, and then hopefully over time we apply those antidotes more and more effectively in real life. But then also I think it's true that we can kind of, if we're not playing that game, then people are going to respond to that. It may not happen quickly, but when we give shorter answers, we don't show a lot of overly enthusiastic, we don't say anything disrespectful, or but we're just like, oh, okay, how, and then because we're not like, oh wow, did they really say that? I can't believe that happened, because that's kind of the response that they want from us. That's what they're hoping for. That's what their other friends do when they are engaging. That's their feedback that they've been getting. And if we don't give that to them, then I think gradually they probably will learn, well, they're no fun. Like, I'm not going to do that with them. I'm going to just focus on doing that with the people who do play my game, and do give me that kind of positive feedback that I'm looking for. So I think, over time, we can make those interactions probably, less intense and shorter. And then, we can, I think, as much as possible, also say, okay, I'm sorry, I do need to, and even if it's just to say, well, I'm, this is normally when I meditate, or this is normally, I'm scheduled to do some study right now. I had planned on studying this book, this text, and so, I'm sorry, I do need to go, and I have this, then. And then they're also like, oh, maybe they'll say, oh, well, what book are you reading? Or can you recommend? And then you can be like, oh yeah, there's this, here it is. And then maybe they can actually get them interested in, more positive things. But I think, if we also kind of model, that's kind of modeling, like, oh, I'm sorry, this is when I meditate. And then they might get interested in meditation. They might start meditating. They might be like, well, can I meditate with you? Be like, of course you can. Let's go, let's go meditate. So then we're kind of showing people what we value and what we take seriously.
Very good. Thank you.
Good. Are you going to read that verse for us?
Okay.
I don't
This
have
one's
it.
from chapter 5, verse 34. When just as I am about to act, I see that my mind is tainted with defilement. At such a time, I should remain unmovable, like a piece of wood. That's my practice these weeks.
Any other questions, thoughts on idle speech? Okay, so those are the non-virtues of speech, and now we'll move into the non-virtues of the mind with day 187. First of which is covetousness. He says, the result of covetousness is to have great desire and no satisfaction. So the more we practice coveting, that's kind of like drinking salt water and thinking that it will, quench our thirst, but we get this negative result of having greater and greater desire and never finding satisfaction. So he says covetousness is the attachment that wants things. The base is the possession of others. And he says that there are 5 points for a mind of covetousness to be a complete non-virtuous action. He says, first, we have great attachment to our own possessions. So if a person, generally is disinterested in possessions, they're not, because if we're going to covet, then we're kind of trying to add to our own collection. We're kind of trying to amass for oneself. And so it kind of starts with apprehending whatever we have. Oh, I have this many cars, or I have this many pieces of jewelry or clothing or electronics, or trading cards, or whatever it is, whatever we might be, and then we relate to those in a really attached way, and then we have the painful. He says we have the painful, dissatisfied mind that wishes to collect even more. So that's 2. First is great attachment to one's own. 2 is the wish to collect even more. 3, we perceive a desirable possession belonging to someone else. 4, we develop an attachment to that. And 5, we decide that we want that possession for ourselves. So covetousness is in relation to things that we don't own, that belong to, that someone else has. Doesn't necessarily mean, could be in a store, could be, well, that belongs, but it's, it's the possession of the store owner. It's the possession of a company. It doesn't have to be like your friend or your neighbor. Could be that too, of course. He says the non-virtue of covetousness is simply the mind wanting that object. There's no need to go beyond that to the mind that actually resolves to acquire the object. Planning to get it and actually getting it are different non-virtues. He says quite possibly the object is unattainable. We might desire to own the whole of New York, but of course that's impossible. He says, nevertheless, we might still covet it, and hence we create the negative karma of covetousness with regard to that object. Because of covetousness, he says, we create negative actions to acquire those things we covet, which sets up another chain of suffering results. So then he says, one of those is to, the ways in which that ripens is to always want more, never be satisfied, even in future lives. So that's covetousness. Any questions about covetousness? So day 188 is ill will. The base is another sentient being. The motivation is the wish to harm. Could be the wish to physically harm, or the wish for harm to befall them, some unfortunate circumstance to befall them. The action is wishing to put the thought to give harm into practice. This means that rather than experiencing a flash of anger, we continue to hope the other being comes to some harm. The completion of this is the definite decision to harm them. The worst form of ill will is the thought of committing one of the 5 immediate negativities, killing our biological mother, biological father, an arhat, maliciously wounding a Buddha, or creating disunity among the Sangha, schism in the Sangha. He says, for the mind of ill will to be complete, there are again 5 characteristics. 1, holding ourselves and the cause of harm toward ourselves to be truly existent, harboring anger toward that person, feeling resentment toward them, the sense that we are justified in getting angry, and then having no shame about the ill will. So because it's a purely mental karma, shame in particular or regret, generating that can really counteract because we didn't actually necessarily do anything. We may have really thought about it. We may be kind of thinking, oh, well, tomorrow I'm going to say this or do this. But because it's still at that point, just a purely mental karma, we can then think, no, that's terrible. That's the wrong way to think. And then we can really kind of cut that. We haven't actually yet used our body or our speech to enact that. Although there's a real danger when ill will is present in the mind that at some point we will use the body or the speech to enact some harm, but this is just occurring. At this level, it can just simply be occurring in the mind. So, we do have to kind of think, at least for this, we kind of have to think, well, the next time I see them, I'm really going to let them have it, or, we have to come up with some. Doesn't mean that we may not actually get to that, but in the mind, at least, there's some plan that we develop. We imagine, we kind of formulate some intent to follow through in some harmful way. And then it would be more so like an incomplete negative karma. This is again for a complete, complete negative karma. It would be a little bit lesser, maybe not fully complete, if it only remained on the level of, I'm not going to do anything, but if some harm came to them, I would be okay with that. I hope that someone does something, or I hope that they lose all of their money, or I hope that their relationship fails or their business fails or something. That would still qualify as the non-virtue of ill will, but it wouldn't be a fully completed, because not all of the bases not all of the steps are present. Any thoughts or questions about ill will? Mm-hmm.
It's more, I guess, a comment than a question, but that weird app called Nextdoor? I just got off of it because 99.9% of the info on it is not helpful or kind. sometimes it's just about flowers or a lost dog, and that's very helpful because then people can connect. But when I would get all these, incoming things, I could just start to feel like, oh, like almost painful. So it was like a feedback of, okay, this one I just hide. I touched the hide button 90% of the time, and I thought, what am I doing on this app? So what I'm feeling tonight with all of the topic and the previous all of Lamrim is that we are being driven, if willing, into the robes, because if we really take these things up, if we really, really practice them, we automatically start renouncing everything. And you don't want to hang out with most people anymore. I mean, that's how I'm feeling. I'm like, okay, this is this way, very narrow but clear way. I don't know. That's just my comment. Just cleaning out more and more. Oop.
So day 189 is the last in this section of the 10 non-virtues, where Lama Zopa is going to talk about wrong views. Wrong views is a mistaken belief that what exists is non-existent. So it's also, he also uses heresy, which again, like I've said, in terms of the Judeo-Christian, isn't my favorite word to use, but he says it's denying the existence of the Four Noble Truths, the three rare sublime ones, which is the Buddha jewel, Dharma jewel, or Sangha jewel, reincarnation or karma. It can be thinking that the points of the Dharma that the Buddha taught are lies, that there's no such thing as bodhicitta or omniscience. So basically, instead of just saying, I don't fully understand that I'm not sure about that, I don't have enough information for that to be clear to me, I'm not sure if I'm ready to practice that, those are all reasonable ways of relating to different topics that the Buddha taught. If we have a really closed off mind that says, I know for a fact that this is made up, it's nonsensical, it's not true, it was designed to, rob people of their money and just to get more support and, to create a false system of power and manipulation, something really cynical, and which is views that many people have about organized religious ideologies and things. If we apply that to any of the Buddha's teachings, then the reason that it's problematic is that we will never have any interest in making any progress toward any of these goals if we relate to them as being fabricated, as being nonsensical, as being just, untrue. So it's much better to just think, well, this hasn't been explained fully to me yet. There's more about this that I need to learn. I don't understand this very well. And so I'll just try to get more information. And then, of course, this is the Lamrim, which is really for Buddhists. It isn't necessarily for people who are of a different religious view, who might be integrating loving kindness meditation, or that's also perfectly valid if a person wants to follow Christianity as their view, and then they also want to meditate on generosity or patience. That's wonderful. But those kinds of opposing views, would be a form of, because they would hold that a person can't achieve omniscience, that a person can't, they would view that as heretical themselves. They would view that as kind of being against Christian doctrine and so on. So this is definitely from a very Buddhist standpoint, rather than a person who's just sort of adopting parts that they like, which is also fully valid. It's only to say that you can't really get the result of enlightenment if any of their critical parts are something that you regard as, inaccurate. So he says, he says, before the flood of heresy sweeps over us, if we're questioning or we feel uncomfortable about something, then we should think about our own level of understanding compared to that of the great teachers who have verified these teachings from their own experience. So the idea is to try to keep an open mind is the idea, rather than just totally closing a door. Any thoughts about, questions or thoughts about wrong views? So those are the 10 non-virtues, and we'll leave it there for today. Any final thoughts or questions? All right, so we'll end with dedication. So as we do, we bring to mind the positive motivation that we established, and feel strongly that having listened and participated, we've actualized that motivation, and that has created positive energy in the mind. And we think about the way in which we want that positive energy to ripen in our spiritual growth and development. So we just bring that to mind and strongly dedicate it for that result. Thinking of all of the spiritually beneficial ways that we want to have flowing from that positive energy. All right. So again, we don't meet on Thursday because it's His Holiness's birthday, and we have a special celebration at the same time. So we will meet again next Monday.